Welcome to your awakening. This video is part of it. Actually, everything is part of it. Once you start to see it rightly, you'll realize that everything's always been directing you upwards or internally, let's say, to the kingdom of heaven, trying to get your attention anyway. So this one's a bit of a follow-on from yesterday's. If you haven't seen yesterday's about the things you don't know that you don't know, and that's a crucial point, right? The things that you don't know, you don't know. If you haven't seen that video, watch it, because in the idea of the things that you don't know about in this world, you're probably wandering around going, why does this keep happening to me? Why is my life like this? Why don't I be able to seem to get ahead, blah, blah, blah. And this video is not about helping you to become successful in the world. Absolutely not. I'm not one of these charlatans that, and I'm calling them charlatans because they are, that puts out books about the 7 keys to spiritual health, wealth, and happiness. This is not about being successful in the world. All of my videos are about helping you to transcend the nature of the human condition so that you can be onward going in the journey of the soul when you leave this world behind, rather than having to come back and repeat this lesson, this class, which is what the world, the universe is, the third dimension is. It's a classroom, and whilst you might look at it sometimes and think that it's a hell of a classroom, it's about the best we've got. All right, so try to follow this on from yesterday, and I probably should have put this in yesterday's video, but a lot of the things when I start doing videos, my mind starts to meander from one concept and one thing to another to make the point, and not necessarily everything relative to the subject matter at hand gets included, just the necessity to get from there to there, you know, A to B. So, but there's a lot of things that pad out spiritual concepts. Some people need them, some people don't need them. Some people take to spirituality like a duck takes to water, and some people sit there and scratch their heads for ages. And that generally depends on a couple of things. How many incarnations you've had, as in how sick and tired are you of the world? How honestly have you looked at the world and realized that it's all the same? And also your life experiences can have a lot to do with it. If you're someone who's had a lot of addiction trouble, a lot of abuse, a lot of situations that you really don't like, you're going to give an alternative to those things when it's presented much more value or much more benefit of the doubt than someone who's got a good life and plenty of money, everything's okay, don't really need it. I mean, there's not really a place where that seed can take root, right? But in a fertile soil, a soil that's ready for this information, I generally find, it's not for everyone, I'm not tarring everyone with the same brush, but just in a general sense, people that have struggled more generally give this more value. And that's kind of sad, but that's how it is. It's how it was for me. So I'm just going to go back a little. And yesterday's thing, we had and I'll do it over here a little. There's our person who's exploring the world, Mr. Potato Head, whatever. Give him some ears. Right, this is you or me. Try and keep it. I won't worry about keeping it singular for this video. If I keep it singular, then there's nothing there. It's just, you know, I meet a lot of spiritual association. I say spiritual associations who often like to tell me that my lingo is not singular. And it's like, well, who are you telling? Who are you telling, really? You know, like, you got to practice what you preach, haven't you? But I'm not claiming to be some saintly kind of person that always expresses myself in the complete accurate vernacular. If I did, I wouldn't say anything. No words would pass my lips, because really there's nothing to say from the personal point of view of my own salvation. But having achieved and having already been told by Jesus himself that my salvation is done, Dave, you're done, and told to sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. And he also told me that he would support me in whatever I did on behalf of salvation. I can now, having had that experience out of time, I'm back here again in time, reanimating this body to help my brothers, which is you guys. And being your brother's keeper is something that, it brings you joy, you know, like it brings you joy. It's like, I don't personally experience joy or pride or anything like that anymore when people say to me, oh, that was a great video, or oh, you were so helpful, and things like that. It's like, well, I'm just grateful to God, because God is the doer, I'm just the vessel, and that's sort of how I see myself, and it's beyond the concept. It's like that's my state of mind. So whilst I appreciate all the nice comments and things, they're no different to me than all the shitty comments. I know that sounds funny, but we're going to get to that later in this video. I think the attitude of gratitude. But what I wanted to do was just go back and recap from yesterday's video. Right, so we're experiencing separation. Here we are in the world. Where's God? Is there really a God? I don't know. I seem to be separate from everyone, and everything is all these other people over here and over here, and they're all doing their own thing, and it seems as if we're all got separate minds and we can have our own separate agendas, right? But I'm presenting the idea that there's only one mind. All these other people's situations and things are part of one mind, observed here in the third eye, and then witnessed to by the physical senses of the body, right? The mind says what I'm seeing based on what my senses report back. That's an elephant, this is a car, that's a boat. I think I'm going to sneeze. This is a sneeze. But all of this stuff is based in the world, right? This is the worldly brain. And there's the North Pole and there's the South Pole. And man is very much entrenched in the worldly brain. We like the idea of being spiritual or having spiritual association, and but we don't really know what it is, you know, like it's a concept, it's an idea, and you usually face it with belief in it or not belief in it, like religion. I either believe what my ministers tell me or I don't, you know, and if you don't, then you probably go find some other kind of religion or some other books or something until something starts to make sense to you. And you never know, sometimes it comes full circle and you come back around to what your minister was telling you, and you're like, oh, just couldn't hear it at first, you know, you have ears but do not hear. Not always though, I'm not an advocate of religion. And if you're reading the Course in Miracles, Jesus says religion does not save, it damns in heaven's name, you know, and he's quite anti-religion. Not that he's anti anything, but he's telling you, beware. Like the stones in the movie Labyrinth, beware, don't go in there. Anyway, getting sidetracked. So you've only got, when you're born here, let's say, when you're born into the dream, or you find yourself in the dream with the use of one of these bodies, everything is relative to your experience within the world or within the universe. You don't know what spirituality is. You don't remember God. You don't remember what you are as spirit. When Jesus says you are the spirit and not the flesh, you think, oh, that's nice, but what is it? What do you mean I'm the spirit and what not the flesh? Like, right? Spirit is the Latin for the word mind, which comes from the Greek psyche, to think and to remember. So you are the mind. God is mind. The universe is mind. Okay, science is just starting. They're just on the threshold of picking that up. I read an article the other day, part of an article where some physicists were tossing around the idea that the universe is conscious, and it is. It's what consciousness is, the outward picturing of the inner state. However, The reason that things keep happening to you again and again, I'll just draw some arrows here going this way. Everything's a cycle. It just repeats. A lesson repeats until it's learned. And until you learn the lesson, the same shit's going to keep happening to you again and again. And each time it comes around in your awareness, let's say here's the lesson being presented there, which shows up, you become aware of it because you get triggered, right? Or you have an emotional reaction. It's like, why, what is this trying to teach me, right? And then you usually, you usually adjust to it. I'll just get drunk. I'll just stay drunk or stoned or something, or I'll have a series of torrid affairs, and hopefully that won't happen to me again. But it does, it comes around because everything here is in a cycle, like the seasons, like the weather, like women's periods, and the oceans, tide ebbs and flows. Everything goes in cycles. You can't avoid the cycles. You are in a cycle of birth to death. It's not true. You're actually in eternity dreaming this whole thing. And this is the figure that you imagine of yourself. This is the figure I imagine of myself that I think I am within the dream. I'm in my own mind. I'm actually in my own mind, in my own dream. It's the ultimate lucid dreaming, if you like. Right? It's like when you put on virtual reality goggles and you're playing Grand Theft Auto or something, and it seems like you're in there, in the computer. That's what this is. Right? However, the reason that these lessons are occurring is not just at random, right? There is this thing in place that is attempting to eliminate suffering. To do that, it has to eliminate the entirety of the physical experience. Now, what you have to do, because that's the only place suffering can happen, right? Suffering is out of accord with unconditional love. And when we say suffering, we're talking about obviously death. Right? Death and eternal life do not coexist, and Jesus says in the Bible there is no death. Right? So it's like, what do you mean there is no death, Jesus? I seem to see it everywhere. Are you mad? So the lessons then are getting you to realize, or are coming around to getting you to realize, to let go of what you think is going on and make a connection with your higher self, to begin to have understandings of what is actually going on. Now, initially that involves you having to relearn the purpose of your body, to relearn your place in the world, to relearn what you're actually here to do, in order to begin to be able to make the changes and have the shifts in consciousness, enough to be able to actually perceive the situation you're in and the situation that is your spiritual truth. And out of those two things, then you will begin to make more informed decisions moving forward in your relationships and heal them of the lessons that show up, the triggers that show up. And yesterday I drew the pizza pie as an idea of the human mind, and each slice is a different relationship, maybe work, religion, home life, kids, whatever we got, politics, God help us, sex, addictions, and we'll just leave that one blank for whatever other kind of relationship you might want. And these are all split up. And what we're doing through healing is learning to remove the definitions of each of those relationships that keep them separate and special, apart from each other, as definitive, and see that they're actually all the same. It doesn't matter how great one is or another, I still end in death. This relationship can't get me out of the cycles of death that I am in, life and death, right? Samsara. So I'm trying to return my mind to God as it was given to me, pure. That's my spiritual work, is to heal or purify my mind, right? In part by following my heart. By following my heart and being true to myself in the world, regardless of what the world tells me, you've got to get a job, you've got to do this, you've got to do what your parents tell you. Well, yes and no. You might have other ideas, whatever. But you've got to follow your heart. Maybe that is doing what your parents tell you. Maybe that is getting a job. Maybe your heart tells you you need to do this, even though you look at it and you go, that's not very spiritual. But what is spiritual? If spirit is everything, if God is everything, then everything that you can do in the world, even if you work for like Apple or Windows or big computer company or Elon Musk or any of those guys, it's still spiritual, because it's your state of mind in the relationship that determines whether you're having an experience that takes you that way or keeps you this way, linear, right? You want to be going in all your relationships, you want to be orienting them or reorienting them so that they represent Homo sapien to Homo illumina, from lower to higher, right? You want to see your highest purpose in every relationship you find yourself in all the slices of the pie. And you heal each of those relationships through forgiveness until finally your mind is pure. There's no more triggers in your relationships. You don't need, because there's no more trigger, you don't need alcohol addiction, you don't need all these coping behaviors and adjusting mechanisms, because there's no more pain in your relationship. The only thing you're ever doing here in the world is adjusting to your pain. Right? And this is crucial, adjusting to your pain. Every decision you make is a decision to adjust to your pain, unless it's a decision to not adjust to my pain. All right. And in yesterday's video, I was talking about being still and leaving the gap. Right? I'm just going to leave a gap. This hurts. This hurts. I'm in the repercussions of that trigger. I'm becoming a worse alcoholic because I just can't stand it. I know it's going to come around again. I can't stand life, the universe, and everything. I hate it. It sucks. All of a sudden, no, I'm leaving the gap, and all of this disappears. Right? I don't need all these coping mechanisms for the next time it comes around again, because I'm making a decision for this, for my whole mind rather than my separated mind. When Jesus says, give up the world and follow me, he means give it up in its entirety. You're being born again. You're being restarted. You're learning to live your life from scratch, from how you should have been taught when you were a child. Right? A lot of this, if you were taught this as a child, it wouldn't have relevance, because you probably haven't had any suffering. It's like, well, why do I want to not adjust to my pain? Because I don't even know what pain is really yet. But when you get to like my age in the form, you know what pain is. So you've eliminated that because you've learned the lesson. The lesson is forgiveness. I'm going to forgive myself for thinking I'm separate from God, right? And separate, represented by my worldly relationships, the outpicturing of thinking that this relationship is separate from these other relationships, right? Symbolically on earth, my relationships represent my state of mind in my relationship with God, okay? My man to world relationship is the same thing as mind to God relationship or spirit to God relationship. My relationship with God is reflected in the relationships that I have in the world. And if God is unconditional love, then I need to return each of those relationships to unconditional love through divine forgiveness. I won't particularly get into forgiveness just yet. I mean, I've got plenty of videos there about forgiveness, I'm sure, as Jesus terms forgiveness. But here's the deal. Here's the scoop. You're in this cycle of learning, and there's all these lessons that show up by your triggers, big capital T, and all the adjustment that you do in the cycle in the meantime, hoping that you don't have to experience all that crap again. We can call this trauma, if you like. Trauma, past trauma, expected trauma, whatever, it doesn't matter. Right? But all of this is because, oh, you can't see that. I just wrote the word eternity up there and drew this line. So this line, let's say this line represents separation. Separation from God, right? Now, separation from God didn't occur in the world. It didn't occur with your birth. The world and the world experience that you find yourself in is the second part of the idea of separation, the second part of the fall from grace. It's the reparative part. It's the healing part. But I'll see if I can do this justice. This is a very difficult topic to try and explain, right? But the first part is separation, right? The first part was the separation or the fall. I'm just going to rub all this out for a second. So let's say into eternity, here's the fall, and you're falling there, and you're not happy about it. In fact, it's terrifying. And you float around as mind, right? You're not a body yet. You float around as this kind of consciousness in the non-manifest soup of the experience of separation, which we'll call dream. Right, so God, mind, dreaming. In the Course in Miracles, it says, into eternity where all is one, there crept a tiny mad idea at which the Son of God remembered not to laugh, and in that the effects of that became serious and all that sort of stuff, and he fell into a sleep to examine it, let's say, or into a coma. I like the idea of a coma, is better. So this is mind asleep in eternity. Okay, this is where separation happened. This is where you actually are, right? But dreaming that you are here in the world as a body. Okay? You might want to rewind that a little bit, and right? You are in eternity now with me, right? When I left my body, when the world disappeared, I disappeared, everything disappeared, and I was back in the Godhead, we were all here. Or all here, I should say, in the eternal, as mind, as spirit. And you might think, well, that sounds boring. There's nothing there. It's just like pure love, pure light. And I guarantee you, when you experience it, you won't want to come back here. You'll feel it in your heart as an idea. It's home. It's not this form of life. It's not this. It's got nothing to do with this. It's absolutely unlike this in every way, and it feels natural, and everyone is there. Not in the body, but as mind, as presence, and you know who everyone is, because everyone is one with you. And whether it's someone who's played the part of your mother or father or lover or enemy or whatever, you love them unconditionally. Okay, so you're here. The experience of separation happened, which is the dream, and we'll call that the fall from grace, or the war in heaven. If you don't know about the fall from grace, the war in heaven, and the Garden of Eden, there's another one. I'll just put garden. There's only really one cool garden. So all of these stories represent the idea of this, of falling asleep, right? In the Bible, it says a mist went up. I think that was when Eve ate the apple or the persimmon and convinced Adam, here, have a bite of this. I just made this. What do you think? You know, and she did. You know, man makes everything he thinks he sees. And it says a mist went up, right? A veil, but a mist. The mist hides the truth. It obscures the truth. And you live within the mist. You live in the mystery of what's beyond the mist, the mystery, right? Which is this wibbly wobbly sort of mist around your mind, where in the human experience, it's felt or it's perceived as this kind of density where somebody can tell you something, and maybe you're listening to my video, but it's not really getting in. You can hear it, but you can't quite, you know, it's like, I hear what you're saying, but I just don't get it, right? because somewhere there's this mist, there's this barrier of separation where I think I'm separate from that person, and their perspective and the things they're telling me aren't 100% absolute relevant to me, because separation seems to think that they're not, right? If everything that I thought was 100% relevant to me, then there would be no sense of separation. And that's what we're attempting to do here. So in our relationships, here's our pizza pie. In the world, we're examining each relationship in our pizza pie, and we're healing each relationship through forgiveness, so that the triggers that it contains that represent this sleep out here, right, can be removed. Not the triggers in here. The triggers in here are symbols for the sleep here. Okay? The triggers represent a belief in separation from God, which is impossible if God is everything. Right? And that brings you to the paradox. You can't escape the paradox. All you can do is begin to apply healing in the dream to the seeming illusions or the seeming relationships that show up, which are symbols of the separation in God's mind, and heal them through forgiveness to the point where they never occurred. The things that you think, the grievances you have, the judgments you've made, they're not valid in any way, shape or form, because you're actually here in eternity, not here in the dream of the dreaming mind. Part of God mind asleep, let's say, which is actually God mind awake. It's like a daydream, you know, when you're sort of imagining something. But it's a daydream you can't snap out of. You're not actually asleep. And sleep in a divine sense is a whole nother thing. Sleep is more as in ignorant of my truth, rather than, you know. So the reason that shit happens on earth is because the idea, or I should say the reason that shit happens in your life right? The reason that shit happens in your life is because somewhere in your thinking, right, is the memory of your truth, right? And you perceive that with your third eye, okay, or with your spiritual eye, which is here. It's an awareness. It's like there's something, I can't put my finger on it, and people often tell me that you know, it's like, I feel like I don't belong in the world. I feel like there's something wrong. I always felt it ever since I was a little kid. I felt like there's something wrong with the world. I couldn't put my finger on it, but it was like, you know, in the Matrix, he says it's like a splinter in your mind driving you mad. I felt that very profoundly. I didn't fit in with anyone or anything anywhere. And it's like, well, somewhere in my consciousness, right, is the awareness that this is all just a dream, and that I'm a figure in a dream. I don't really exist at all. And when I wake up here, all of this on earth disappears, right? My job on earth is to awaken myself by remembering the truth about me, which is here, okay? So, but there's this mist in my mind, there's this mist in my consciousness that doesn't let me remember this. It keeps me preoccupied with the world over here, and there's Australia and all the other countries, and it keeps me preoccupied with the world and everything that seems to be going on in the world outside of myself, rather than looking within and finding the place where I truly am in my mind. Now, Jesus talks about that. I'll just do a bigger bubble, bigger thought bubble. It's probably not much bigger. I'll do it again. Oh, if you can like and subscribe, apparently that's good. Tyna tells me to remind people to like and subscribe. So we get a little bit of feedback from advertising, and Tyna usually goes behind me and tries to limit the advertising to whatever extent she can. But I think that last video, a few people said there was a lot of ads It's like, I'm not in charge of that really. But Tyna didn't go behind me. I think she's going to do it today. So if you haven't seen it yet, you might get the less ads version or the no ads version if you're a subscriber to YouTube or whatever. But like and subscribe, because the little bit of money we do get goes towards printing these little books, Traveler's Guide to the Third Dimension, which we give out for free. And there's heaps of stuff in there, like everything I talk about is in here in this tiny little book that you can put in your pocket. And whenever you're having a moment, pull it out and read it and go, thanks, whew, that's better. I thought the world was real for a second. Thought I had to obey the laws of man instead of the laws of God. And it teaches you how to abide within the laws of God so that the laws of man don't even bother you. Right? They don't, it's not that you're against them or for them or anything. It's just like your vibration is beyond the need for that sort of guidance that might see you on the right side or the wrong side of the law. And you don't really care. It's like, John in jail there, and he eventually got beheaded, but he accepted that going to jail was part of his thing, and acceptance is a huge, it's probably the key of finding inner peace, really, acceptance and forgiveness. But it doesn't bother you to be to do what you're told to do in the world, or not to do what you're told in the world, by authority, because that authority you recognize is symbolic, and it comes from an idea of true authority, which is God. All right, and I won't explain all that just at the moment, but anyway, here's our head. Here we are, wondering why the world is the way it is, can't quite see things clearly. It's like, we're sort of examining stuff. Here's our thought bubble, all right? And we've got, let's say, subconscious down here in our thinking, which is the alphabet soup, and it's A to Z of everything there, the alphabet soup of potential for the experience that we have when we're looking outside of ourselves here, what it could be. Maybe I'm this, maybe I'm that. I might be male, I might be female, I might be trans, I might be anything. None of that is true, because you're not actually in the world. You're actually, and let's put the mist, there's the mist. You're actually here in this dreaming. Oh, hang on. I'll do just dreaming eyes. Okay, you're actually there. But this mist, this belief in separation that exists in consciousness is propelled and fueled by ego. All of this down here, subconscious and conscious, is the domain of ego, right? You can't seem to get out of it in your mind, and it takes incredible efforts at meditation, prayer, and everything else to be able to do that. I don't want to sound like I'm bragging, but I can do that quite easily now. I know that sounds kind of like, well, fuck you, like I've had people tell me, people get quite upset about it because they've been meditating for years and years and years and still have had no success. But you have to have the mind training to go with your meditation, which is what is offered through the Course in Miracles. 365 lessons, one a day for a whole year. Do them properly. Don't do them with your mist, with your veiled sort of thing, right? Because that mist in the pizza pie, that mist, that ignorance, and let's call the mist ignorance. That ignorance of your true self affects every relationship that you have in the world. If you knew that every relationship you were only actually meeting yourself in a different disguise, you'd be completely grateful, regardless of what part that person was playing. It's like, wow, here's me playing the good person in my life, or here's me playing a shitbag in my life. And you would learn that you can navigate that relationship, good or bad, to bring it to a point of peace and take all the catalyst out of it that normally triggers you up or down from the idea of peace, which is the singular state of mind you're attempting to reach, in order to match the vibration of the singular state of mind that you are here. Okay? So you heal. The more you heal here, the thinner this veil gets there. Okay? The more healing, the more work you do on yourself in the world, the easier you will find it to traverse the threshold between consciousness and higher mind. Now, Jesus talks about this as the miracle level. And I'm not going to contradict Jesus because he's the head of the atonement. And if you haven't met him, which is funny for several reasons, because you already have. But if you haven't met him, he's a very impressive fella. But the more work you do on yourself here to heal these relationships and bring them back to peace, right, through removing the triggers, through forgiveness, the thinner this veil becomes. And when you meditate, the ego hates for you to meditate. You know, it's like anything, because it's like the ego doesn't know what's up here. It's trapped here with you. It's your guide in a foreign land, right? It's like an imaginary friend. I programmed this thing called an ego. Let's put some code in there, and the ego's purpose is to keep me here until I figure out what the hell's going on. Basically, that's it, right? But you forgot that you programmed it, so you've got this voice in your head that just, you know, it's got some bugs now. It's been going for so long, lifetime after lifetime, and you keep saying to it, no, not that, no, not that, no, not that, that's not it, that's not it, it's not 42, no, don't know what the meaning of life, the universe, and everything is. And it just keeps going now, and you're sick of listening to it because you realize somewhere it's got no real answers. All it can tell you is what's down here in the conscious and subconscious. It can't tell you about the truth of yourself up here, right? About the dreaming mind, where you are in eternity, let's say everywhere, right? I hope I'm doing a good job of explaining this. It's a very, very difficult subject. So the more work you do on yourself here, healing each individual relationship, pardon me, I always get hiccups. The more work you do on yourself here, the thinner that becomes, the easier it becomes for you to poke a hole, let's say, and it's not really a hole in that. And I'm just going to go to another image. I like the whiteboard because a great deal of people out there have a more artistic mindset and they see things through imagery. You may be aware, let's say then, that here you are having your experience, and in your consciousness, let's say there's consciousness down here, subconsciousness below, and you exist in this level. You're not really aware of your subconscious. I mean, sometimes you sort of look in there if you're still and you look at your thoughts and you think, oh, those thoughts are horrible. I hope no one knows that I'm thinking things like that. But when you're conscious and you're interacting here, generally you're only drawing from what's being offered, you know, from the A to Z of the crap that's going on in your mind. And we're all the same there. We've all got the same disgusting thoughts and we've all got the same wonderful thoughts, you know. So it's like judging anyone for the way they think or whatever about anything here is pointless. Because once you realize that all of this is the same for everybody, you realize that you can't judge either. There, by the grace of God, go I. Okay? You might be someone who sees yourself as quite a well-adjusted and nice person. You might think, look at that horrible person or that group of people, aren't they awful? Because you're trying to keep yourself contained in here to a certain set of parameters within the A to Z. This is me. Why aren't these people more like me? These other people might be over here. They look over here at you and they'll say, well, that person's very petite and very uptight and they've got to stick up their ass about life, you know, whatever. There's no right or wrong in here. It's all in the zoo. It's all fucking crazy, right? The people that think they're well adjusted are just as crazy as the people that think everyone else is crazy. I think that's the same people. Everybody thinks everyone else is crazy, but I'm okay. You know, it's like, come on, we're all in the same bucket. Right? So you're healing all your relationships. The veil between consciousness and higher mind is getting thinner, right? The less grievance, the less judgment, the less density of vibration that you have, the easier it becomes through releasing judgment. And you can't not judge, but you can learn to judge for your holiness and for the holiness of others, recognizing through the third eye that we're all up here somewhere together, actually. Well, not even here. We're out here in reality, asleep, as one mind. This is God's Son, let's say, or the extension of God, or the creation of God, awakening to its reality, being already awake, being only daydreaming or fixated on a tiny mad spot, tiny mad idea. It's like if you had a white room, floor, ceiling, walls, everything perfect white, and there was a tiny little black dot on the ceiling, like a little spot of mold or something, you'd be like, fuck. And I know people that get anally fixated on things like that. Well, imagine that in an eternal sense, in a divine sense, God-mind sense. Separation, what's separation? And you're fixated on it. You examine everything because there's nothing else. If you take separation away, it's just the spot's gone from the ceiling and there's just all the white walls again. Thank God that spot's gone. Right? You're back to being your true self. There's no drama, no conflict, no nothing in your experience of yourself, and nothing to work out, nothing to heal. Right? Now, in truth, there is nothing to work out and nothing to heal. Right? The black spot on the ceiling was removed through Jesus' resurrection 2,000 years ago. You've been living in the effect of it ever since. It's occurring now as this thing called the awakening, which we're learning to participate in, because time can't just be taken from you. You have to be weaned off it, right? When I had my awakening, I realized that the nature of my earthbound mind perception of myself, whatever you want to call that, was so different. So different. It's like two cultures that clash, and like the British and the Aboriginals in Australia. The cultures are so different. They can't just start living together. It doesn't work that way. They have to integrate. They have to be weaned into each other's cultures and whatever. And unfortunately, in that particular example, the British, being incredibly arrogant, had no intention of trying to understand Aboriginal culture. If they did, they probably would have come to this conclusion 200 years ago, because the Aboriginal people, of course, do understand the dreaming and the dream time, and they do understand this walking of spirit and everything like that. And it's a great shame that the ignorance of the British could not take the time to be bothered to understand that. But it had to happen the way it happened. All you black fellas that might be watching this, good on you, Bungie. So where are we at? All right, so I'm practicing my forgiveness. All my relationships are starting to get better. I'm starting to become more in the world but not of it. I'm feeling more okay with the fact that I don't have to fit in. Right? I can just be myself. Right? And what happens is, as my mind begins to become more purified, I begin to get closer to the veil in my meditations. And I always like to put the idea that the veil is like a woolen sweater, right? So even my beanie that I'm wearing, if I look at it out here, it looks quite solid. I can see a little bit of light through it, but if I bring it right up close, I can actually see the outside world through the weave, right? I can see what's going on the other side, but if I hold it out here, I can't see a thing. I can just see little speckles of light through the thing, right? So when you begin to heal your relationships, what you're doing is you're opening up that weave and you begin to see more light. It gets less dense. The fog in your mind is less dense. You become more self-aware, more purposeful, more present in the world down here with your relationships, and your relationships is like, oh, everything's nice now, right? But in your meditative efforts, when you try to meditate, when you practice meditation and prayer, and if you're doing the workbook lessons, you're learning to keep your mind still. In that stillness, what you're doing is approaching the veil and peeping through into here. And what happens is, pow, once you put your eye up against your spiritual eye, once you put your spiritual eye up against the threshold, the veil, the mist, right, you begin to see the light of truth, which you never quite forgot in wandering away in dreams, Course in Miracles quote, from your higher mind or your miracle level mind, right? Your miracle level mind is the Holy Spirit. It's your higher guide, the spirit of wholeness, which is in your mind, and it's simply been shielded from you, right? Your awareness of it has been shielded from you by your fascination with the external world and trying to look for perfection in a person or people. That's why young fellas, they always try to find the perfect image of the woman. They're not worried about the content, just the image, right? Because the mind is mesmerized by the external world. It's a great trap, right? It takes a lot of maturity and a lot of being beaten down as well, through relationships before you realize that love is content, not form, and that beauty is only skin deep and doesn't last forever, and all that sort of thing. And you'll find that that is relative to all of your relationships in every aspect of them as they occur, because they're always getting older and wrinklier, and friends that you had one day suddenly got cancer and died the next, they're gone, and all these sorts of things, and you're like, fuck, that's horrible. This is a horrible place, right? Well, let's get the fuck out of here. Let's wake up. Let's get out of this dream mind state and get on with the journey of the soul outside of the third dimension. Let's go to the fifth. The fifth is not bad, right? And we're preparing for that now, right? You're learning to be miracle-minded to become revelation-ready. Revelation is what it is that shows you this outside the dream altogether. Outside of what you think you're aware of, dreaming this, right? This here is part of this, right? It's the spark that you brought with you. It's in your mind. It's a tiny, tiny little spark of eternity that you tried to steal. We'll just look at it that way. You tried to pinch it. It's like the biting the apple, right? This is a memory of this, all right? This memory exists in your mind here on earth. Your body is the symbol of mind in denial, but it cannot deny what it's in denial of without it actually having what it's in denial of as part of it. Can you hear that? You can't deny something if you're unaware of what you're denying, right? Now, in the video I made yesterday, however, I said you don't know what you don't know. It's what you don't know that you don't know, which sounds like you can't deny what, oh God, it's a tongue twister. You can't be in denial of something that you don't know about, right? And it's not that you don't know about it. You know about it, you've just forgotten. You've forgotten that you are whole and perfect as God created you. The memory of your wholeness and perfection is contained in your mind, but not in the conscious part of your mind, which is represented by the physical experience, right? I'm not going to find the truth of myself in the world or in my thoughts about myself that my conscious mind has. I have to meditate, pray, ask for help, whatever. With that, do the work of healing, heal the pizza pie of my relationships so that all my relationships are not special. They're all the same. They're all divine. And open up this weave, or let's say, look closer through the weave, or perceive with my third eye in meditation through perfect stillness, the mastery of perfect stillness, what's on the other side of consciousness, right? That memory exists in your mind. It reminds you of this, where you are and what you are forever. And you'll have, let's just rub that out. In here in your mind, you'll have holy instants. every time every time in those cycles of all your shit, and there's the bloody trigger, and you've got all this stuff going on, the relationship, right? Here's you're looking at it. Every time you choose to leave this blank, what you're doing in here is leaving a little gap where you refuse to fill it in. I don't know how to heal this trauma. I don't know how to heal this situation. I'm going to let it be miraculous. I'm going to let it be a miracle, right? And so you're praying, and your prayer transcends time and space up to here, to your higher mind, where the memory is, where the Holy Spirit is abiding with you in that memory of your truth. And every time that you do that in all your relationships, every time you leave the gap, you leave another gap and another gap and another gap in here. Okay? You're refusing to listen to consciousness, to ego. Instead, you're deferring. You're choosing to listen to the Holy Spirit. I want to listen to my spiritual guidance. I'm going to listen to something else. It doesn't necessarily always speak to you in words. I've heard it in words. I've heard it as a feeling or felt it as a feeling. And sometimes you just know it, right? It's guidance and you can't explain it. It's bizarre. But you've got to practice with it. You've got to practice your listening and practice. And you'll be like, well, what the fuck am I listening to? How am I supposed to know? You'll know. Okay, you'll just know. Because it's not that blah, blah voice in your head. It's something else. And I can't tell you what the something else is. It's divine. It's miraculous. If you can describe a miracle, it's not a miracle. Okay? So every time you leave the gap, you have a little holy instant in here. Right? Sometimes you'll have spontaneous experiences of light, of going through that veil, and you'll have a moment of light in relationship to the relationship, right? It's like my ex-wife, Rosie, she does massage therapy or whatever, and she's always got hands on people. She doesn't advertise that she's a light worker or anything like that. She just does massage. But people will quite often tell her, I saw lights when you were doing that. I had an experience of light. It's because in Rosie's mind, right, where two or more gather, only one needs to be aware of the divine purpose of the relationship. Where two or more gather, there I am in the midst of them. So Rosie's doing massage on this person who's got pain or whatever, and this is terrible, I need a massage. Rosie's holding the gap in her mind because she doesn't believe in pain anymore. She knows that this is a lesson that isn't being learned, and she's taking responsibility for that person's lesson because she's an action of unconditional love. I want to release you from that because I'm the one, you're coming to me for help. I'm the one who's projected onto you the idea of sick or suffering or dying or whatever. And she takes responsibility for that here as the trigger or as the situation, the catalyst, and it's healed here. Okay? Now, because we are whole, because we are one, that healing up to the Holy Spirit and down here. Right? There is only one mind. We are all one. And it's beautiful. Jesus says in the Course in Miracles, the sole responsibility of the miracle worker is to accept atonement for themselves. So in the situation where somebody comes for healing, let's say, or you need a relationship that's bad and you healed, you need healing of it in your own mind because you're aware that forgiveness has to apply to you so you can remove the trigger so that that relationship no longer bothers you because you're accepting that everything is part of a universal learning, right? Your prayer and your prayer of willingness to accept atonement for yourself, oneness for yourself in this situation, rather than the appearance of the situation that shows up as seemingly separate people, right? I want to accept atonement at one. I am at one with this person. I don't know how to do that because I'm stuck down here in consciousness, but the Holy Spirit, I can ask for something to happen, and the miracle, remember you can't define it, occurs because where two or more are gathered, there I am in the midst of them. Right? I am. And that's Jesus. And I mean, we're learning to accept that Jesus is the head of the atonement, and that the Holy Spirit is his gift. As God mind manifests through the man Jesus, the ascended Jesus, Yeshua. Somebody said to me the other day, this is what I get, right? It's funny. I was talking about Jesus the other day, and the only takeaway that the person got from what I was saying was, his name isn't Jesus, it's Yeshua. It's like, all right, well, you didn't hear anything. You didn't hear a thing I just said. You were fixated on the very first time I said Jesus, and you've been waiting to tell me that his name is Yeshua, and you missed the whole thing. So anyway, every time you practice that, let's get rid of the person with the soreness. Every time you practice healing in your mind, you have these holy instants, right? And you want to have lots of them. A holy instant is a shift in consciousness, okay? When you have your first true shift in consciousness that allows you to actually have an elevated perception of yourself, whether you have a light experience or whether it just you have a light bulb moment and you go, oh shit, I get it now. You want to be having those as quickly and as often as you can. You don't want the ego to whisper its lullabies to you again. So, that was just a coincidence. That wasn't because you were meditating. That was just like deja vu. No one knows. No one knows how it happens. The ego's very good at that, right? And before long, you'll believe all those lies whispered to you when you're asleep at night, during the day. And 10 years will go by and you'll have completely forgotten that you had an actual shift in consciousness, and you won't have made any gains. So you want to be practicing in all the pizza pie of your relationships, this holy instant, all right? I'm just going to leave that gap open. I'm not going to adjust here. And when you're not adjusting, right, this is a circle of pain. All cycles in the world are painful. All cycles are pain. When you're not adjusting, you're not adjusting to your pain. This upsets me, this hurts me, I'm emotionally compromised, whatever. And it's like, but I'm just going to be still. I'm going to try something else now. Rather than adjust to it by going out and getting drunk or stoned or whatever, I'm just going to be still, and I'm going to practice. I'm just going to breathe, and I'm going to connect with the Holy Spirit through prayer and ask for the healing of my mind that sees myself as separate from the relationship. Okay, because I'm healing the idea of separation out here. I'm awakening from the dream of separation through a dream, a forgiven dream, a dream of oneness to my eternal truth. Okay? And that happens again and again and again and again. So I'm just going to be still and offer that whole relationship and my responsibility to it as the dreamer of my dream to the Holy Spirit. And as I'm still, I refuse to adjust to my pain, and I feel my pain. I'm not going to try and push it down, drink it away, whatever. I'm just going to feel it, let it be there. It's like, fuck it, it's just an emotion. It's just thoughts and emotions driving me crazy, but only thoughts and emotions nonetheless. I don't have to react to them. I can step back and simply observe them and be in the observance of them, allow them to be there. And what you will find is that in a general sense, it feels like an upwelling. When you think you're going to cry and you can feel it coming on, I'm going to cry, and then you start crying, right? Well, you can feel it coming on. You can feel the emotionality coming up, right? Getting stronger. The temptation is, because you always adjust, is to want to adjust again, right? And you're not very good at your mind training yet, let's say. You're not very disciplined at it. So maybe you do adjust again. Maybe someone knocks on the door and you go and answer the door instead of being still. Maybe the phone rings. I'll just answer my phone. I'll do this later. Too late. It's always better if you catch it in the moment, because it's most authentic there, right? Doing it in retrospect, not impossible, but I would highly recommend, if you're feeling emotional, be still right when you feel it. Let it be true. Let it be real. And you let that come up, just keep breathing, and you'll find that you start crying or whatever. And if you have given it to the Holy Spirit through honesty of the heart and the mind together for the healing of the mind that believes in separation, you'll find that something occurs where you start to giggle and laugh. I'm just peeping through the veil there, right? You giggle and laugh, and boom, shankar, it's all over until the next time. All right, I love you. That's almost an hour. Gosh. So I hope that's cool. Watch it. It's what you don't know that you don't know that affects you, okay? So be about that. Peace.